it was our uncle that actually moved to part of the South Arkansas along the Mississippi River. Then as the laws changed, because there were a lot of too many immigrants coming from China, they started limiting it to professional people and merchants. So some of our family started coming over as merchants, and they would work in the grocery stores. And my uncle had started a grocery store with several other Chinese, and then as they made money, they would start splitting up. One would buy the others out, and then the others would either go to another part of the same town or either go to another small town and set up a business there. And then my uncle started having my father and his father come over, and they came over in the early 1900s. And my father was only about 9 years old when he came to the U.S., and my mother was, well, his mother never came over. But my father went to about the 6th grade of high school, and then he dropped out because he had to work in the grocery store. And turned out that my uncle died, my father took over the grocery store, and then he later went back to China. There was an arranged marriage from the same village he was from. He married my mother with an arranged marriage. She stayed in China, but they had a child, my oldest brother, there in China. And then a few months later, my father came back to the U.S., and it was about 2 or 3 years later that he was able to bring my mother over with my oldest brother. And then they settled in Dermot, Arkansas, which is South Arkansas. And then I was born in 1940. And when I was growing up, my parents always told me, don't make waves, be nice to everyone, don't get in trouble. And because of that, I became very shy. And I was like embarrassed, I guess, to be Asian and different. And I remember even in high school, I was a senior and in a speech class, and there was only like 10 people in the speech class in a small school. I could not get up in front of 10 people and give a talk. I was just shaking. And that came from childhood of being, a person that stay in the background, don't make waves and all this. And so it really affected me significantly. I went to college, and college wasn't as bad because I went to the University of Texas. It was a large school. There were not that many Asians at that school, but I roomed with my brother and 2 other Chinese men from Houston. And we were friends, but we kind of did things together. When it changed my life was when I got to medical school. I was afraid I was going to flunk, and it scared me so much that I studied day and night, and it ended up that I was at the top of the class. And I realized, I said, I can do better if I have the confidence. And so I started gaining confidence and throughout medical school. And then I worked for this Japanese surgeon who pioneered heart surgery. And I began to pick up surgical skills in the summer, working on animals and doing surgery. And I began to get more confident. And that made a big difference when I was in medical school. And then as a physician, I had several people tell me, you can accomplish anything you want. And I believed them, and I started working hard. And I think it really affected, like Brent, because he said earlier that I didn't spend a lot of time with them because I was working all the time. Back then, when you were training in medical school and in residency and internship, we worked like day and night, and then maybe a 12-hour shift, a 12-hour off, and then worked 36 hours again. So I was very busy, and I felt like I'd neglected him a lot, and his mother, did most of the growing up and guiding him. But those are some of the things I remember that have affected my life.